Hi guys, and welcome back. Today I'm going to be introducing you to some new eyeshadow palettes in my collection. I recently made a video, which I can card above for you and link in the description box, talking about subscribers who wanted to send me gifts and what my policy sort of is on that, because I try to keep my collection curated and I don't want to waste people's time. So if you're interested in that, make sure you check out that video. If you've never been here before, hey there, my name is Rachel. I'm a homeschooling stay-at-home mom. I really enjoy eyeshadow, but particularly colorful eyeshadow, and I upload several videos every week that are all eyeshadow related. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, you might want to stick around, like and subscribe before you leave. And now let's get going with this video. But today I have a very ugly box, which is filled with very pretty eyeshadow, and I'm really excited to introduce you guys to these new palettes. I haven't played with any of them except for one, and I played with that one just this morning so that I could do this eye look, because I knew that I'd be making this video today. So I want to just show you some of these new pretties in my collection. I'm super excited to start making videos with them and playing around with different formulas, a couple of brands that I hadn't tried before. In case you're curious, what I am wearing on my face will be linked down below in the description box. I did not film today's look because I only had time to make one video, so this is it. But let's get going. All of the palettes that I'm talking about today are gifts from subscribers, except for 3 which I purchased myself. 2 of them were secondhand and 1 was new. Anything that is still available, I will link below in the description box in case you guys are interested in finding them. I'm going to go into first the Party in Puerto Rico palette from BH Cosmetics. This palette was a gift from a fellow YouTuber, and I am actually pretty excited about this one. I almost bought this palette several times because I love the orange and yellow color story with a bit of more bronzy tones and this pop of pink right here. I just think it's really interesting. I watched several videos on this a while back when I was first looking at buying it, like when BH Cosmetics was still launching their travel series, and I heard that this palette, even in the newest BH formulation, wasn't quite as good as Passion in Paris or Blueberry Muffin, but it was like a notch below. And so I was okay with that. I can live with a notch below because that was a great formula. So I figured a notch below wouldn't be too far off. And I did really like the colors. This palette doesn't bring any very, very new shades to my collection. What it does is it brings them all into one spot. This one actually might be a totally different shade. I don't think I have anything like this in my collection. And 1 or 2 of these more brownish bronze tones. The orange aspect of this palette is not super new to my collection, but I think that a lot of the other shades in here are new. And I'm excited to play with it because I think that these colors are so vibrant and fun. Now we have the Rococo palette from Muse Beauty. Now, I think that they were Muse first, then they rebranded as Kailav. And now I think that they're closing up shop. I believe their website is still active. They're just liquidating stock right now. But anyway, this is when they were Muse Beauty. And I love the theme of this brand. I love that they were like, all of their palettes that I saw anyway were based on these beautiful romantic period of the arts paintings. And that's definitely my style of painting. This particular one is focused around the Rococo art movement, of course, but I love the Impressionists as well. And all of them are sort of in that general classic painting period of time, which I love. Anyway, I said yes to this palette from that same YouTuber because I'm kind of getting into more pastel, lighter tones. Sometimes I want the drama. Sometimes I want to mix like a really dark, dramatic outer corner, but then a much, much lighter tone on the inner corner, the inner lid. I really prefer light to mid-tone shimmers, and I thought that this would be a fun palette to play with because not only is the color story very feminine, soft, and floral, but it's also lighter tones, so it fits in with that wheelhouse, you know? I don't know how often a lot of these palettes have been used because the YouTuber who gave them to me has quite a large collection, and this was just part of her declutter, and she offered to send me a few things if I saw anything in her declutter video that I was interested in. So that's where some of these palettes came from. Super kind and generous of her, and I'm very grateful. So I'm excited to play with this one because this to me is a totally new brand. I'd never tried anything from Muse or Kailav, and I'm excited to play with the color story and see how the formula is. A brand that I do know and love, Beauty Bay. This is the 16 Pan Bright Palette 2.0. This was a gift from one of my subscribers, and I said yes to this one because I love these vibrant, bright colors. I think they are so much fun. The super bright pink and the super bright orange and a bright blue and a bright yellow. They're just, I mean, Brights is a great name for this palette. We've also got a light white and a dark black. Probably won't use this blue shimmer because it's not very unique, but it's also not the best tone for my skin. But aside from that, I think I would use all of the colors in here. I do have to say, the Beauty Bay white mattes, if you compare them to the BH Cosmetics white mattes in the Lost in Los Angeles palette, there is an incredible white matte, as well as in the Mimosa palette. And they're just like amazing white mattes. So Beauty Bay mattes do not live up to that. But I think Beauty Bay does a fantastic job with their deeper tones where other brands struggle. So I'm excited to play with this one. I think it's going to be really fun to get some very bright, vibrant looks out of this palette. It's going to be a good time. Sorry, I'm all croaky today. The allergies have kicked in. There's been a frog living in my throat for like 2 days. Okay, so this is one of the palettes that I bought myself. This is the Holidays palette. I just call it the Muppets palette. It was the collaboration with ColourPop that they launched this past Christmas. I got this for $9 on a secondhand app, and I'm excited about it because, again, with the light, bright, vibrant sorts of tones, they're not nearly as saturated as, for example, the Beauty Bay Brights. But they're so much fun, and they're so light and sort of flowery, sort of neonish. ColourPop has recently released a formula called Pearlescent Glitter, which is what they're calling an eye safe glitter formula, and there are 3 of those in here. This one, and this one are the pearlescent glitters. And I don't absolutely love them, but I don't particularly dislike them either. I'm a little bit ambivalent. I have used them, which is more than I've done with other glitters, but the pearlescent glitter is fine. It does add an extra layer of sparkle. I find them to be a tiny bit gritty. I wish that they were maybe suspended in a bit of a more gel-like finish, but I don't know anything about formulating eyeshadows, so maybe that's not realistic. Anyway, it's not a terrible formula. It does add extra sparkle, and I think it's a good fit for this palette and this color story. I have played with this one a couple of times. I bought this one a little while ago, honestly, and I was waiting for this video to introduce it to you guys, so I haven't played with it on camera, but I have played with it, and I've been recreating a couple other YouTubers' looks. It's been fun. A different palette from a subscriber is this one right here. This is the Revolution Pro Ultimate Crystal Palette Adorned, and this one is absolutely new. Totally untouched, not even swatched. I think that this palette's really pretty. I really like the rose gold tones of it. It's got a little bit of a purple side of things, a little bit of a champagne side of things. I don't know for sure if I'm going to keep this palette because there's another one that's coming up later which has a similar color story, and I feel like if I'm gonna keep one of them, I should keep the one that's already been used, which is that other one, whereas this one's totally new. I could pass this along to somebody as a brand new untouched palette. But I do think the color story is really nice. I don't know anything about the formula. I haven't tried anything from Revolution Pro. I watched a couple videos on it, got some decent reviews, but again, it's a matter of personal preference and what you're used to and what your eyeshadow aesthetic is. Mine is a little bit more bold and dramatic, so I don't know for sure if this one's gonna get much use in my collection. I do think the color story is really pretty and I like it. It's just when I compared it to the other one that someone else sent me, which came after I told the subscriber, sure, I'd like to try it, I'm thinking, oh, okay, those are actually pretty close and I probably don't need to keep both. We'll see. We'll just jump right into that palette since I kept referencing it. This is the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk palette. This is one which I almost bought multiple times as well. I have in the past owned only one Huda palette. It was the Mercury Retrograde, and I ended up decluttering it because while the performance was nice, the palette itself was just too light toned across the board. So I looked at this one because this one is kind of the opposite of that. This one is not light toned at all. This one's quite deep and dramatic. It's very sunset eyes sort of thing. And I think it's really pretty. It does have a couple of lighter shades, good transition shades, and then it's got a couple deeper shades. It also has the pop of purple with some orangey tones. It's got the rose golds. So you see how it's close to the one that I just showed you. They're similar in color story. This one goes deeper, which is appealing to me. It's also been used, so I don't feel bad playing with it and then making my decision, whereas I don't want to play with a brand new palette, decide I don't like it, and then pass it on to someone else who could have just gotten a new palette. Do you know what I mean? The color story of this palette's really pretty. It's definitely more warm than I usually go, but I like warm and cool toned eyeshadow, so that doesn't matter too much to me. I think the packaging's gorgeous. Yeah, it's super pretty. Let's move into the eyeshadow palette that I'm wearing today. This is from Sydney Grace. I have a friend who I chat with on Instagram. She loves Sydney Grace. She's always talking about how the shadows feel very luxe, very high end. She says she feels fancy wearing their shadows because they perform so nicely. Anyway, this is the Sydney Grace X Temptalia Quintessence palette in the light format. I think the color story is really fun. It's not the most incredible or unique, but I love that it's cool toned, and I am light skin tone, so these lighter shades work for me nicely. I did swatch this one at the behest of my friend. She's like, you have to swatch their shimmers. Their shimmers are as good as their mattes. And really, it's funny because some brands are really good at mattes and okay with shimmers. Other brands are great with shimmers and okay with mattes. She was really excited saying that Sydney Grace does both of those formulas quite well. So I swatched, I think, these two shimmers, and they were quite pretty. Anyway, so for today's look, I used this in the crease, this in the outer corner, deep in the outer corner, of course. On my lid space, I used this shade and this one over here. And then this is an inner corner highlight. And then because I felt like my lid wasn't quite exciting enough, I took this shade and I put it sort of towards the outer third. But that's what I did today. The formula did perform very nicely. It reminded me a little bit of some of my more high-end brands, such as Sigma, the way that they perform. You just get a nice, refined sort of result. So that was the experience so far that I've had with this. Next time I play with this, I definitely want to dive into these much brighter shimmers. These shadows right here, as you can see on my eyes today, they're a lot more purple on my skin than they looked in the pan, which I like. I like that a lot. So I'm excited that those are sort of the transition tones of the palette, because that purpley gray base goes very nicely with all of the shimmers and the other couple of mattes that are in here. And it's going to be a good time to play with it, I think. All right, let's talk about another of the 3 palettes that I bought myself. Here is the drum roll, please. Paletopoly palette from Ace Beauté. Okay, I have had Ace Beauté in the past. I bought Flare and Oceanic in the old formula, Paradise Fallen in the new formula, and I had the Violet Sage palette, which I'm told was the new formula. Let me quickly tell you my experience with these palettes. I have enjoyed Oceanic and Flare. The formula is not incredible, but it's not bad either. It's just a little bit weak. Then the Paradise Fallen palette, which was in the new formula, I decluttered that one pretty early on. I didn't think that the shimmers or the mattes, but particularly the shimmers, performed any better than the palettes that I had in their old formula. And I was really confused by that because I had heard everybody saying how great the reformulation was. Then I got the Violet Sage palette, which again, I decluttered pretty quickly because I was wholly unimpressed by the formula. And so I was thinking, okay, I'm done with Ace Beauté. It's just not the best fit for me. But then this palette came out and everybody says that this palette is fantastic. And Yellow Caniquefist is my favorite YouTuber, and she has a wealth of experience with so many different eyeshadow brands, and she says that Ace Beauté in the new formulation has one of her favorite formulas anywhere. And when she reviewed this palette, she gave it high marks, and in literally every single ranking video since this palette was launched, she has ranked this palette top 5 and I think top 3 in one of her ranking videos. She formally apologized to the Paletopoly palette on numerous occasions, saying, I'm so sorry I didn't give you more screen time, because apparently the palette's incredible. This was launched, you probably know, as a game. I had absolutely no interest in the game. I did highlight this palette as being the most innovative release of the year, back in a video that I did at the end of 2022. I can card it above for if you want. I think it's a great idea. The game is a great idea. If you're stuck, or if you're on a dry spell, or if you're bored, or if you are having a girls' night and you just want to do something wild and crazy, the Paletopoly game is a great idea. But I just wanted the palette. Anyway, I'm excited to play with this one because looking at it, it's reminding me of Glamlight in the way the formula presents visually. I have not played with it. I haven't touched it. I haven't swatched it. I'm really, really curious because this is the last call for me as far as Ace Beauté. This is the deal breaker here. So I'm super curious to see how it performs, and I am excited that if it goes well, it could easily become one of my favorite palettes because the color story is so unique. The YouTuber who sent me a bunch of stuff also included in her package the Nomad Cosmetics Paradise Islands palette. This one really excites me, and I think the color story is really pretty. I really enjoy, again, with the pastels and the lighter tones as my eyeshadow preferences develop. I still really love a deep dramatic eye, but I want to contrast it with lighter tones. I want to have the option. So this palette definitely drew me in. I love how tropical it feels. It's kind of like looking at sherbet, you know? It's just so colorful. It's not rainbow per se. It doesn't have those kinds of true, more primary colors. All of these shades are more nuanced, but I think that that just makes it more interesting. But I think it's really pretty. We've got a nice assortment of, you know, pink matte, pink shimmer, orange matte, orange shimmer, green matte, green shimmer, etc. generally across the board, I think this shade's really fun. I don't know, I'm just really excited to play with this one. And because it's such a recent release, I was a bit surprised that the YouTuber wasn't interested in trying to sell it. I know it can be a hassle to just try to sell things, but maybe you just want to share with somebody and be a blessing. And I definitely feel blessed by people's generosity. Let's talk about Beauty Bay. This is the Age of Opulence palette. When my subscriber offered this palette to me, I told her, first off, you can definitely sell this because it was limited edition. You can't get it anymore. So you could easily sell this for probably 2 or 3 times more than you paid for it. And secondly, I already owned this palette in the past and did pass it on. I sold it myself. And the reason that I passed it on was because although I love the color story, I think that this is New Year's Eve in a palette. Like, you cannot more embody the feeling and the excitement and the glitz and glam of New Year's Eve than this palette. But I passed mine along because it was at a time when I wasn't as advanced in my skills. Now I'm really familiar with the Beauty Bay formula and I use it all the time. I very much enjoy it, but I had to learn how to work with it, you know, because at the time that I had this palette originally, I was still in the stage of starting light and working dark, but you can't do that with Beauty Bay. The dark shadows do not like to build. You have to start dark and then work light. And I wasn't doing that. So I had a lot of trouble with my Age of Opulence palette at that time because I just couldn't seem to get the formula to cooperate for me. So I passed it along. But when my subscriber offered this one to me again, I told her straight out, like, I had this palette and decluttered it. I just didn't want her again to be losing the opportunity to sell it for a higher price than she even paid because of its marketability, we'll say, because it was limited edition. But she just wanted to be a blessing and she wanted to share her interest with somebody and send the palette where she knew it would be appreciated. So I'm very thankful and I'm excited to play with this one again because it has been out of my collection for a while. It's totally untouched. The color story is beautiful and I know the formula now, so it should be a good time. 2 more palettes to talk about. I hope my voice holds out. It's being very dry. I'm going to have some hot lemony tea after this, I think. Okay, so this is the 3rd palette that I personally purchased. This is the one that I bought from the brand on launch, and I'm really excited to play with this guy. This is the Lure palette from Blend Bunny. I've never tried Blend Bunny. This is my first palette from the brand. I've heard high marks from everyone about the formula of Blend Bunny. Everybody says they're amazing. I did talk about this palette in a recent Eye It or Buy It video, which I can card above for you if you're interested in seeing that. I think that this palette is really, really pretty. And the reason I hadn't tried Blend Bunny before was because their palettes are bigger, but also pretty much everything they launched was a version of a rainbow until their 2 recent more neutral launches, but then neutrals don't interest me that much. So I was just waiting for a slightly smaller palette in a color story that really got me excited, and the Lure palette definitely hits that mark. This is brand new. Okay, so here's the Lure palette. I love the color story. I love the color story. I love the blue, green, purple, pinky tones. This row over here is sort of mauves. I love the way that Blend Bunny lays out their palettes. They are so logical. They simply make sense. In this one, we have a row of shimmers, a row of lighter pastels, midtones, and darks. I'm super excited to play with this one. I love that it does go light to dark, which is a qualifier that I want in all of my palettes. I want the option to go super deep and dramatic. You could go very smoky with this, or you could stay quite pastel. It's a good balance. It makes sense. The color story is attractive and appealing. I just really like it. I'm excited to play with it. Also, this packaging is textured. Do you hear my toddler? She's a little wild card. This packaging is textured. It's got these mermaidy fish scales, and they have a little bit of glitter in them, but it's not glitter that comes off on your fingers or in the packaging or on your shelf, but it is definitely there, and it adds just a little bit of sparkle to the packaging. It's pretty. I'm excited. We have arrived at the last new palette in my collection, another gift from a generous, thoughtful, kind, and sweet subscriber. This is the Earthy palette from Beauty Bay. This is the 42 pan. These colored palettes, Midnight, Earthy, and Berries, were released in 3 sizes. They were released in 9 pans, 16 pans, and 42 pans. I own the 16 pan Midnight. I opted not to get Berries at all because I thought it was a little bit too monochromatic, and I've been very tempted multiple times to grab the Earthy 16 pan. The reason I didn't get Earthy was because I love my Glam Light Dirty Martini palette. That's my favorite green palette. But I still really liked the Earthy, and I thought, you know what, I can't justify spending the money on both when I already love Dirty Martini. But when my subscriber offered this one to me, I was thinking, oh my goodness, 42 is a lot. This is by far the biggest palette in my collection. It's huge. To be truthful, I would not have purchased this size because it's just a lot. However, when it was offered to me, I was like, yeah, because green is my favorite color of eyeshadow to play with, and it was free. And honestly, the subscriber didn't pay for it. She ordered this palette from Beauty Bay and they accidentally sent her two, and then I guess they didn't want to take the time to have the second one returned, so she got this for free. So I don't feel bad saying that, you know, I said yes, even though I wouldn't have spent my own money on it. She got it for free too. And she's a sweetheart. We'll chat on Instagram. She's a really sweet lady. But anyway, this is the 42 Pan Earthy palette. It's filled with such beautiful tones. And again, I like the Beauty Bay formula. So I knew that it wasn't really a risk to have such a large palette coming into my collection in a formula that I like, in a color story that I like. The reason that I considered earthy but not berries is because berries was pretty monochromatic, but the earthy palette included a lot of brown tones as well. It's not just green. And in this larger palette, we even dip into some reds and cream shades. So it's not totally only greens. I know I'm gonna have a lot of fun playing with it. This is probably gonna replace a couple of smaller green palettes in my collection. I don't think it's gonna replace Dirty Martini, but I think it's probably gonna replace a couple of other ones that I have, and I just don't need if I have and enjoy this. That is gonna wrap it up for today's video. These are all the newest palettes in my collection. I really enjoy sharing this hobby with you. It is so much fun to find a little community of people where you can chat about a common interest, and maybe you don't agree on everything across the board, but you have something in common, and that can bring us together in just really sweet ways. So to the people who have sent me these palettes, thank you so much. I very much appreciate you. And to everybody who has taken the time to watch this video, I appreciate you too. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out with me. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more. I'm always excited to upload new content and play with these new palettes. Remember to check the description box below to find information about what I'm wearing today and to find links for any of these palettes that may still be available. I'll also link some other videos and stuff or playlists down there. I don't know. We'll figure it out. There will be stuff in the description box. Thanks for hanging out with me, and until I see you guys again in my next video, I hope you have a great day. Bye!